Merlin Emrys was Merlinus Ambrosius in Geoffrey of Monmouth. So that's the Merlin that we all think of as son of the devil, the one who creates the sword and the stone and Excalibur and all that type of stuff. So that's that Merlin. And then there's Merlin. I can't pronounce it. Merlin the Wild Man. The other guy. Merlin the Wild Man. Merlinus Caledonensis.
Was he king of the Woads?
I'm going to...
Sorry.
That is, I guess, the Merlin that they're trying to go for in that dumb movie that we will get to. But anyway, so the second Merlin is a later guy who is sometimes identified with the other Merlin, because these are, quasi-mythological figures. But this Merlin is from Scotland, and he goes crazy after a battle, the Battle of Arthuriana, and goes off to live in the woods. And he's kind of where we get our idea of, the Mad Merlin. The guy who goes crazy. He lives in the woods. He makes prophecies. He hangs out with Taliesin, the Welsh bard, and his sister. And there was a cycle of poems about him in medieval Welsh. And Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote a Life of Merlin, the Vita Merlini, in Latin, and it's a very long poem, and it's basically based on all of these Welsh stories about the other Merlin, but he identifies the two Merlins together, right? So the first Merlin Ambrosius, is the one where Vortigern was going to kill him as a human child sacrifice in order to make his castle stop falling down. And that's when Merlin says, well, actually, if you dig into that pool, you'll find a red dragon and a white dragon, and you let them out and let them fight it out. And then you can build your castle without it falling down instead of, I don't know, killing me and using my blood for your mortar.
So he was a baby at the time?
Well, he's a child, yes.
Okay.
But he's a child who can already speak. And that whole idea of I'm aging backwards thing.
Like Hermes.
Yeah, kind of. There's a bit of Hermes in there, but it's also the whole, he's born as a little old man, and he's a Benjamin Button thing.
Yeah.
Right. So this also comes out of Geoffrey of Monmouth. This I like how this guy is pulling from, I don't want to say authentic lore, but it is authentic lore because you get into authenticity, that's not a thing. But yeah, I know what he's pulling from, and it is medieval literature and stuff. So which is really cool. In fact, even just calling himself Merton is kind of interesting because, the original Merlin, Geoffrey couldn't call him that in his texts. He had to change it to Merlin because it sounded too much like the French word for shit.
Oh, okay.
If he spelled it the Welsh way,
it
would look like merd. So yeah, that's how we got the name Merlin.
Patreon.
Merlin kind of gives him the lowdown on what's going on, and that there's going to be an eclipse in 3 days, and Morgana is returned from her imprisonment in the bowels of the earth to wreak havoc and basically enslave everyone, and it's going to be horrible.
Half sister of Arthur.
The half sister of Arthur. Yeah. So Morgana, they basically go for the evil Morgan Le Fay story.
Yeah.
And this is, again, classic Arthurian stuff. Evil Morgan or Morgana is, this. I'm glad that's who the villain was.
Yeah.
That works. It is lore. I think it works really well. Yeah, and her whole thing is, you're not a real Pendragon. Arthur was never a real Pendragon because he was, the bastard son.
Yeah.
They don't get into the whole the whole Mordred thing here, thankfully, because it is a film for kids, and let's not get into that. But they kind of make her whole thing that this kid who is nobody doesn't deserve to be in charge. Now, this kid, Arthur, who is nobody, does not deserve to be king. And obviously Alexander does not deserve to be anything.
Kind of the same as Knights of the Round Table. For her, 3 minutes of her character.
Yeah, I know.
She's interesting, and now she's gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Now she's in the background.
But I like that idea of the motivation. There's a certain yes, Arthur is the real son of Uther Pendragon, but there's also a sort of idea of you don't have to have been raised in the castle and all of this stuff. The whole reason Arthur is worthy in these types of tellings is because he is a good and just person who is able to inspire people.
I will say I feel like part of the reason that this is not a more successful film is that she is doesn't really get to choose scenery. She
No.
She doesn't really have much of a personality.
Yeah, I wish there was a lot more evil
Yeah.
coming from her. I wish there was a lot more of like, here are my dastardly plans. Here's what I'm going to do to people.
Yeah, like
You know.
a bit like what's her name in that second Thor movie?
Yeah, Kate Blanchett.
Kate
Yeah.
Blanchett. Like,
Oh man, if you had Kate Blanchett chewing scenery in this movie would have killed.
I
I mean, the actress here is good. Don't get me wrong.
She's good, but I feel like writing wise, it would have helped.
Yeah.
You know, and
It's a little weak, and I want a little bit more, evil.
yeah, it's like the bad guys are, it's mostly CGI, so
Yeah.
they get killed by car doors.
That was pretty fun. Yeah.
It's fun, but at the same time, it does feel a little slight. It doesn't feel like the end of the world.
It doesn't. I mean, it is for children after all. I
Yeah.
mean, we kind of have to remind ourselves this is a movie for kids. They can't go full, Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
Although it's got a little bit of that Army of Darkness energy.
A little bit.
Yeah, the guy who wrote this. So can we talk a second about Joe Cornish?
Sure.
Just so that people can get like context. So this guy, he's a British comedian, and I guess he had like a BBC show or something that I never caught. But he's the writer and director of Attack the Block with John Boyega.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other people were in it, actually. Like Jodie Whittaker's in that, actually.
I didn't know that.
There's another doctor.
A Doctor Who.
Yes, a Doctor Who. But like he's kind of from the same scene, I guess. I don't know if it's a scene, but he's friends with Edgar Wright.
And you can feel it.
And you can feel it. And he apparently was one of the writers on Ant-Man, the first Ant-Man, which I like.
Yeah.
That movie. That's a fun movie. He was one of the screenwriters for The Adventures of Tintin. So yeah, I mean, he's kind of, out of like the whole Edgar Wright sort of school. He's actually an actor in Hot Fuzz. I know one thing he definitely read. Joseph Campbell.
Oh, don't you have to if you're a director these days?
Oh, I know. And again, I keep saying it is for kids because, there's a part of me who is a humorless adult and rolling my eyes when the kids are just like, "Oh no, this totally makes sense. King Arthur is kind of the same thing as like Luke Skywalker and Harry Potter." Like they name check both of those figures, and it's like
Frodo and Samwise.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. He's absolutely right. Like this is all kind of following the same template of this person who, turns out is actually the lost, heir to whatever, but he's also like the person who's just the right guy for the job because he can inspire people. Like Luke Skywalker is just King Arthur.
Yeah, but also he specifically mentions missing father,
Yes, the missing father thing, or bad father in some case. I mean, Luke Skywalker, it's funny he even brings it up because it's so, like, Star Wars is so blatant. It's just basically like, what if we took Hidden Fortress and threw in King Arthur and Merlin? That's basically all it is.
No. It's more than that.
No, I love Star Wars. I love that first movie.
It's got Jawas.
What is a Jawa but an elf?
Yeah.
Right? They got glowy eyes.
Yeah.
Right. No, a Jawa is just basically a gnome. Not so much an elf. He's more of a gnome.
Yeah.
But anyway,